Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 59 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels from Sandusky, Ohio, and I'm glad that you're listening. This episode is the first of several, what I think are rather unique episodes that I'm trying to put together and release over the next few weeks as I draw closer to the one-year anniversary of my podcast. And I'll be honest with you, had you told me when I started this last year that, yeah, you're going to actually get a year out of this, and you're going to do it for a year, well, I'm not sure I would have believed you. I have to tell you, as we get going here, I'm having a tremendous amount of fun engaging with people online, sharing my views on the game, hearing from you about what you believe and what you think about the game and why you're supporters of the clubs you support, that sort of thing. I have truly enjoyed all of this interaction, and it's been great fun. And that's not to say it hasn't been some work, because it's a hobby. This is something that I'm doing because I'm having fun with it, but it does take a considerable amount of time to research and put together an episode and get it out there, get it published, that type of thing. And I wouldn't change it though, because I'm having an absolute blast doing this. I'm really enjoying learning from you and hoping that you're having a little bit of fun listening to me. And again, I'm not any kind of an expert or anything of that nature, but I'm still really enjoying the heck out of what I'm doing here, and I hope you'll continue tuning in and hope you'll consider sharing the show with your friends. Now, as I said, this episode is the first of several that I'm doing that are different from what I've done before. I've done a lot of one-on-one interviews, but this time I'm doing more one-on-one interviews, but I'm doing them in multiple increments, and it's been interesting. The last few days, I've decided what I wanted to do is I wanted to try to get the reaction of team supporters, club supporters. Maybe they're involved in the media to an extent, or maybe they're just simply fans, and find out what they thought about their club's trade period. And I've been able to talk to a handful of fans. I've done since Saturday. I'm now recording this on Wednesday, but between Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I believe I did 9 interviews, and I'm going to be releasing 3 of those interviews in this episode. And these 3 had to go together because these young men work together on a podcast of their own, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. But as I was saying, my goal with this was to find out what supporters thought about their club's trade period and where they think they're going to go in the draft and that sort of thing. And just a little bit of an outlook of what they thought 2021 is going to look like. And yeah, it's early. It's only November. But it's great to do some discussion and some hypothesizing about what could possibly happen. So like I said, I've done 9 of these interviews so far. I'm hoping to do a whole bunch more. It's been interesting because I've done some of these interviews where I'm 16 hours behind Melbourne time. So when I'm scheduling these interviews, it's happening at some rather unique opportunities. I had an interview that finished up on Sunday night, Monday morning at 12:15, and I was in my classroom that next morning at 6 o'clock. And then I had an interview that following morning at 5:30 in the morning. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Absolutely had fun with it. So glad that I did it. But it's been a bit of a challenge working around everybody's schedule and just the simple fact that we're on other sides of the planet. That has to be accounted for as I'm trying to do this. And I can't thank the people who have been coming on here nearly enough for how accommodating they have been in terms of coming on and sharing their views. So I wanted to go ahead and drop these first 3 interviews today with this. And these 3 are with the 3 hosts of the Where Do We Begin podcast, which you can find on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. I've got the link for both of those in the show notes. And I talked with Harper, Lachie, and Jackson, the 3 hosts, to get their views on the Bombers, Cats, and Magpies. And I think you'll like the banter. We had a lot of fun. These guys are significantly younger than I am. I don't even know if you combine their ages. It'd be pretty close. Combined, they might be my age. But we're going to hear from the Bomber supporter, Harper Pestinga. We're going to hear from Magpie supporter Jackson Georgie, and from Cat supporter Lachie Gibbs, who I talked to yesterday. and they were kind enough to invite me a few weeks ago onto their grand final preview episode, and I kind of felt like maybe I had arrived, and it was interesting because I was on this podcast with two nationally known footy reporters, people who know this game, who study this game, who write about this game for a living. So I absolutely enjoyed the instances and the times that I've spoken with them, and I hope you enjoy these chats as well. And we're going to hear from, first up, we're going to hear from Harper, and then from Jackson, and then finally from Lachie. So sit back and enjoy. I think you'll like the podcast, and enjoy, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is a podcast host himself, and I was able to be on his show. He was not there for this episode, however. His partners, Harper and Lachie, were hosting that episode. But I'd like to welcome Jackson Georgie to the podcast, and Jackson is a Magpies supporter, so we're going to talk about the Magpies trade period, and looking forward to what he's going to have to say, because a lot of people are talking about the Magpies. So Jackson, great to talk with you.
Yeah, hey, how you going?
I'm great. It's closing in on midnight here, but that's why they invented coffee. So we're talking about the Magpies, and once the trade period ended, what's the first thing that's going through your mind as a Magpie supporter?
Look, just in general, as a Collingwood supporter, you're always a bit pessimistic, but I always like to see the positive in it. Unfortunately, we lost some good pieces in Treloar, and I think the way we went about the Treloar trade wasn't great, and that probably didn't help us when it actually came to make the deal. I think we gave way too much to the Doggies as well as Treloar and didn't get enough back, but they might have a plan in that sense. The Steve-O deal, I was shocked to see Artu Bonasovalagi added to it, because I feel he had a great start when he played these few games this year. Bit of shock to see him put into it, but from what I've heard in the media, and you can't always, the media isn't always reliable, but Steve-O just wasn't into it this year, and I think Collingwood just saw that and was like, I think we have better people in that position.
Do you think they had to add Atu to that deal to get North Melbourne to take Stevenson and his salary off their hands?
I would think so. Atu seems like a very bright, young, really big potential player. And that probably would have helped sweeten the deal a bit and get Steve-O off the books. But in terms of, the backing of the players, I think we have a good, I don't know, the way we're going to back up losing Treloar and Steve-O, I think we do have the plays for it. So I feel even De Goey might go into the midfield to replace Treloar. Sire's coming in, and in the forward line, you've got De Goey coming out of the goal square, which is what Steve-O wanted to do, but I think they want to go in the De Goey direction.
Okay. Now, when the decision was made, were you understanding of it, or were you a little were you kind of just like frustrated? Because we talked off air. You said that take a minute and just tell us how you became a Magpie supporter, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so as a lot of people here with this game, your parents are a huge influence. So obviously my dad his family were immigrants from Cyprus, so they moved over here. And I think my dad was born after that, so he was Australian citizen. But his sister's one of his sister's best friends supported Collingwood, and then brought it onto my auntie, and then my auntie put it onto my dad, and then my dad put it onto me, and that's the rest is history. I've been a member of the club for now 13 years going into next year, which is really exciting. I love being part of it. It makes you feel part of the club, and I love going to the games, especially if we can go to them next year here in Melbourne.
And let's hope that's the case. Let's hope you can get back.
Yeah, exactly. I think the way we're going, I think at this stage, they're hoping to have a crowd at the Boxing Day cricket match at the MCG, so it won't be huge. it'll be 25,000, which in that stadium is a quarter full. But hopefully by March we'll have a bigger crowd, and hopefully I'll be able to go to a few Collingwood games.
Well, let me ask you this question, because maybe you know the answer to this, because I haven't seen it. Are they going to return the grass from the GABA back to the MCG?
I don't know. They hardly even used it. It was on the sideline. It wasn't even on the actual ground. So
okay. Yeah, I don't remember them pointing out exactly where it was. Yeah, so it was.
I remember seeing a photo of it. It was right next to the interchange bench, on the outside of the court of the ground. So obviously they didn't use it. I don't think they'll be traveling it back. I think the MCG will just get a new patch,
new piece of sod.
Yeah, we can just have a bit of the MCG always at the GABA.
So let me ask you this, because I've wondered this, and I talk online with a gentleman who's been a Pies supporter for a long time, and he's been rather frustrated that somebody who tends to do a lot of talking about the other 17 clubs hasn't said a word about the Magpies situation. And I'm talking about Eddie McGuire here.
Of course, yes.
That Eddie has
been.
I've been joking online that should we start a GoFundMe page to get some lozenges for his laryngitis?
Yeah, Eddie is a character, more than definitely. I think in terms of just the way it was out in the media, I don't think Collingwood went great in terms of saying anything, but in a sense of with the media, it was out there and all the clubs were on the upper hand and they already knew we were wanting to get rid of the players. So I don't think there could have been much said, I feel, with it. So the Treloar deal came out straight after the grand final. So we were always going to lose Treloar and everyone was like, okay, cool. We could play Collingwood for this. So I don't think we could have said anything that will give us the upper hand. So I just don't think they said anything in general.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we will hear from him at all though, but because it's
unless he says something on Footy Confidential or Footy Classified, sorry.
Right.
But I hardly think we'll be getting any goss out of Eddie.
So, looking at at the other clubs in the league, what deal surprised you the most besides maybe it was one of the Collingwood deals, but besides the Pies deals, which one surprised you the most?
Well, in terms of Collingwood, the Steve-O one did surprise me because that was so late in the piece. I think it came out day 3 of trade that we were open to getting rid of him. In terms of, I didn't really keep up with all the other ones. I think Carlton, as much as I hate to say it, I think they had a good trade period, bringing in Adam Sard and Zach Williams. And obviously Geelong, you're always going to have a good trade period when you bring in a Coleman medalist.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt, but it's they gave up a lot to get him.
I think it'll definitely be worth it. It's I was speaking to a Geelong friend about this, and it's definitely a replacement to Hawkins.
That's
exactly. I know this. But I was just saying it's a great replacement for Hawkins, who's been such a stalwart in the club. I think it's just future proofing that forward line for you guys, which is really good for you. I wish we could have done the same, to be totally honest. But from what I'm hearing, we're going to the draft not earlier than expected. I think we're trying to go to the draft without bottoming out, like an Adelaide or a Carlton or a Gold Coast Suns.
Mm-hmm.
Which if that's their plan, that's their plan. Getting rid of some salary and then maybe going good in free agency next year. The contracts that I heard that the 3 players that left, Phillips, Steve-O and Treloar were all on the back of 2018, which we had an amazing year, but those players really haven't backed it up since.
Right, and they were back-ended deals, if I'm not mistaken, so they were getting more expensive as
exactly.
Contract
so
went along.
I think Treloar was on 900,000 next year, and that all came, and Phillips as well. I think he was on 500,000, and Steve-O apparently 580, just on the back of 2018. So, those figures might be wrong, but very back-ended deals all off the back of 2018, and that those three players, maybe not Treloar. I think Treloar was just, he has a huge contract.
Right.
We need to get rid of him, but the other two definitely haven't backed it up since 2018, and that's why I'm not too pessimistic on losing them. I'm annoyed at what we got back, but I feel with the media saying everything, we were just sort of, we didn't have the upper hand in any of those deals.
Well, it's interesting, because they gave up a lot to get a little bit back, basically to get salary cap relief in many instances. And it reminds me of something, and I know you had said you're not much of an NFL fan, but a few years ago, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and they've been lousy for a long time. They made a trade for a quarterback from the team in Houston, and Houston wanted to get rid of this guy. He was very expensive. So Houston sent the player and a second-round draft pick to Cleveland, and Cleveland gave them a fourth-round draft pick. So basically they said, here, take this higher pick to take on this guy's contract. So it's in a way, it reminded me of what Collingwood did this past week with the
that's
with these
the
deals.
Treloar deal right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not particularly happy with what we gave up to get rid of Treloar. But in saying that, like I said before, I think we do have the pieces in the club to replace them. I think we've got Dacos coming on the wing to replace Phillips, who hasn't been particularly good since about halfway through 2019. As much as I love Flip from that 2018 season where he was amazing, that's where he earned that contract. I think Dacos has got that wing under wraps next year. I think we're putting a lot of hope into Sire Wills if he gets another contract, if he's not delisted because he's out of contract this year. And just all the young guys, maybe even putting DeGoey in the middle a bit more, like he wants to. He wants to be the next Dusty, so he wants to go into the midfield. And then, DeGoey playing out of the goal square as well. And that's where Steve-O wanted to play. But if you got a player like DeGoey, you sort of want to favour him. And especially if you're going to put so much money into him.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we kind of covered everything there. I'm thrilled to, get your input on this. And like I said, I'm going to be talking to hopefully lots of folks. I've got, I have a Swans supporter from Tasmania who's been sending me messages this evening that wants to come on as well, but he wasn't sure about the technology aspect of it. I said, well, I'm an old person too. And he said, well, I'm older than you are. So we'll see if we can nurse him through this. And because I'd love to hear his insight. Cause he said he's the longest continuous Swan supporter in Tasmania from back when they were still in South Melbourne. Yeah. So, but Jackson, I appreciate you coming on. This was fun. I'm definitely gonna be keeping in touch with the three of you guys, because you guys put out a quality podcast. It's you have fun with it. You do a great job, and it's one, if you're not listening to it, you definitely should be listening to Where Do We Begin. Check that out. Yep. You can find it on Spotify. I don't think
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm not sure about the other ones.
Yeah, you're not on Stitcher, which is the one. Stitcher's the one that I use for all the true crime podcasts that I listen to. But I've got you bookmarked on my Spotify account, so I can check it out there. But hey, thanks a bunch, and tell Lachie and Harper that I said hello. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. My next guest is the second of the three hosts of the Where Do We Begin podcast, which you can find on Spotify. This is Harper Pessinger, and I was able to meet with these guys back before the grand final and had a great talk with them. These are your three young men who are college age, high school age, that are doing their podcast, and they've done a fantastic job with it. And if you're a Footy fan, you owe it to yourself to check out what they're doing. He's a huge Bombers supporter. And Harper, I appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon to come on and talk with me.
I'm flattered by that intro, Craig. Great to be on. I've been waiting to come on for probably a few months now, so it's great to be with you.
It's great that we could work it out. This has been kind of a whirlwind of a weekend for me, getting schedules done, and I've been scratching them down on paper and realizing I have a calendar book in my briefcase that I could just as easily write things down in, but I haven't done it yet. So we're here to talk about the trade deals and such, and the trade period that went on for the Bombers. And before we get into that, just real quickly, I wanted to, just take a second and tell people about your podcast that you guys have and how it began and that sort of thing. Tell us, where do you begin?
Okay, I'll tell you where we do begin. So I think it was probably around early April. It was just at the start of the first lockdown here in Melbourne. Melbourne listeners know we've had 2 separate lockdowns because of the second wave. But I was thinking, what am I going to do with all my spare time in this lockdown? So I had an idea. I'll do a podcast, do a footy podcast, or just a sports podcast in general, really. We have people from all different sports. And I said, Jackson, you had Jackson on earlier. Jackson, do you want to get involved with this podcast? And he was super keen for it. And so we just interview all kinds of Australian sports personalities. They might be commentators or journalists or fans like you we had on our grand final preview, and players, of course, as well. People from all different sports. And now we've recently got Lachie on board as well. Lachie and I, this is a bit of an exclusive, but Lachie and I haven't actually met in person before because he came on for a finals preview as a Cats fan, and then I invited him on to be a co-host. So Lachie, I'm looking forward to actually meeting Lachie in person, doing some in-studio recordings. But yeah, went on for a bit there, but that's a summary of our podcast, I guess. No, so check it out, guys.
Absolutely, and you can find it on Spotify. Now, where in Australia do you have it listed?
Well, we're based in Melbourne, and
no, I meant where online could they find it? Where could they find your podcast?
We've got it on all the podcast apps, pretty much. If there's one that we're not on, give us shoot us a message on the social medias, and we'll try to get it on that app. But we've got it on the major podcast apps, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you right now, it's not on Stitcher.
It's not on Stitcher, okay?
No, which is the one that I use most of the time. So, but I have it on Spotify.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, I'll get it on Stitcher there. So I'll write that down.
Now, I've kind of been asking some similar questions to people about their club and the trade period and such. But what are the first words that come to mind to you after now that the trade period is gone and the moves have been made? What's kind of your gut reaction? What are you thinking?
Oh, my gut reaction is it's kind of a little bit of sadness, but with the Sard and Fantasia and Danaher were all going, that was kind of inevitable. But those 3 players were some of my favourite players in my Essendon supporting life, really, because they always added a bit of excitement, and Essendon's been pretty bad for my whole life, and they were around for one of the most exciting periods to be an Essendon fan. So it's a bit sad that they're going, but it was inevitable. And expected but sad. That would be my gut reaction, really.
Yeah, they made I think more moves than any other club during this trade period. I mean, I'm looking at the list here on my other screen, and I see a list of basically 7 moves that they made. You know, bringing in Sean McKernan, bringing in Peter Wright. They brought in Jai Caldwell. They brought in Nick Hind, who was named that a lot of people didn't realize he was going to be getting moved. He was kind of like really? He's here now.
He used to play for our VFL team actually, and then he went to St Kilda. And also just to correct you, Sean McKernan's left the club. He was.
That's right. He did leave. I'm sorry, I had that backwards.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, he was delisted and he got picked up by St Kilda. But yeah, I'm just a bit disappointed. I like Sean, so yeah, it's a bit sad.
So you're heading into your club's heading into the draft now. Do you consider them to be in a rebuilding mode right now?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a complete rebuild because we could surprise everyone and make finals this year, and I wouldn't be super surprised if we finished maybe top 6th or something, because just some unexpected thing. But I wouldn't consider us to be in a full rebuild. I'll just say we're clearing out some of the players that don't want to be there, which is a reasonable thing to do if you don't want players that don't want to be at the club. So, yeah.
Okay. Because, Danaher had been injured for the better part of the last couple of seasons, and he came back and played a few games at the end which I think that really helped Essendon because I think didn't they secure the number 6 pick for him?
I
It was
think
one of those top 3 picks.
Yeah, we have 6, 7, and 8. I think we got 7 compensation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that by getting him out there for those few games, I think that helped to solidify them getting that high pick back for him when he headed up to the Lions. And if I'm not mistaken, Fantasia did not play much this year either.
Oh yeah, I don't know how many games Fantasia played, but it would have been, I'd say probably 5 or 6, maybe even less.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so you really lost. Your big loss was Saad, who left. That was a great defender. So that's definitely a hole that you have to fill there. So when you're saying that you might surprise people, you may very well do that because you've got 3 of the top 8 picks in the draft coming up here.
Yeah.
And do you guys have any like father-son players who are coming in this year that they're going to have to like go up and bid to get them? Which I still have to figure out how all of that works.
Yeah, it is a complex system. I don't think we've got. I might be wrong here. I'm not an expert on the draft, but I don't think we've got any father-son picks that we can bid on. But just on side quickly, I'm very sad about him going because he was consistently one of our best players week in, week out, and he was a very fun, electric player to watch when he was running off halfback. And he's actually from around the same area of Melbourne as me, so hits a bit close to home. That one, it's a bit sad to think about, but yeah.
And and when he's headed out, it's interesting. With so many clubs that are actually in Melbourne, he's moved to another club, but he hasn't left town. I mean that's just a quick sidebar. That's going to be awkward when Adam Treloar runs into his old mates from Collingwood out at dinner sometime. Yeah.
And no, he's not just moving to any club. He's moving to one of our biggest rivals as well. And
right.
He will be viciously booed when Essendon play Carlton if fans are back in the stadium because Essendon and Carlton hate each other. And if you move from Essendon to Carlton, Essendon to Collingwood, Essendon to Richmond, you'll get you'll cop it, to put it simply.
And it's then he'll have earned that then in that case. So
risky move to make if he wants to kind of stay away from any big amounts of abuse. But fair enough if you want to go to a club like Carlton.
So you may not know the players because you're not, as you said, you're not an expert on the draft. I'm certainly not an expert on the draft. But what positions do you think the club needs to be targeting or looking at in the draft coming up next month?
Well, I think we'll probably need a kind of. I'm not sure if there are any of these good players available in the draft, but I'd like all Essendon fans say this: a big-bodied midfielder, like maybe a 190 centimeter. What's that? Like 6'4", something like that. 6'4" midfielder, a real bull who can kind of burst out of packs and has got real strength in the midfield because. Lots of our midfielders at the moment are really small guys, quick, skillful, but haven't got too much physical strength about them. So that is top of my wish list, I'd say. Okay.
And I'm looking at the list right now here that they have, and you're right. You've got they've got two players, Cutler and Hibbard, who are over 190 centimeters. So you're right. There's only 2 that are of that size.
And they're not even like fully embedded into the best 22 yet. They're definitely not core players. And Cutler usually plays on the wing as well. He doesn't even play inside mid. And Hibbard probably played like 3 games. So.
Yeah, they've got him not having played very many in his career. Yep. So, is there anybody that was delisted by another club who you think could come in and help the Bombers? Is there anybody who is out there you're going, I hope we pick him up?
To be honest, I'm relatively happy. Well, not happy, but I wouldn't complain if we kept the same older players that we have and just go to the draft and take what's at the draft and don't pick pick up any players that have been delisted, but I'm happy to be proved wrong and we pick up some diamond in the rough that's been delisted by another club. I couldn't name a particular player, but a big body midfielder, if there are any out there, he would be much appreciated.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, that would be wonderful if that was to happen. And again, you guys have 6, 7, and 8, and then not until pick 44, which I believe is in the third round, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of the third round.
Kind of mid-third round, I think.
Mid-third, yeah. And then you've got 3 later picks. And if I'm not mistaken, sometimes those picks don't even always get taken, depending on how many spots there are on the list that are available.
We've got 67, 74, 85, and 87, and I'd be surprised if we used more than one of them, to be honest, because we've got 4 picks that are all above pick 45, and
right.
I wouldn't be that surprised if we just took those 4 or 5 players in the draft and no more.
And it's great having those players in those high spots, or those spots to pick what could be, club changing players. Somebody who comes in at pick 6, 7, and 8 is somebody who should be able to step in and help your club fairly early on.
Yeah.
And hopefully everything will be back to allow the VFL to be played next year, and allow the lower comps to allow these players to develop. Because last year, you have to applaud the league for getting the season in, but there were a lot of things that left some of the players that are lower on the list struggling to find a spot for this year.
100%, and I hope that pick 6, 7, and 8. I hope that they will probably play about 45 games between them next season. Maybe a couple of them play 20 each, and then maybe another one plays 5 or something if he's not fully right to go at the start of the season. But those are my hopes for those picks next year.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'm going through about a handful of questions with everybody coming on, and I'm glad to see that you're pleased with the way things have gone, and you're excited. You're definitely a glass half full person as far as the club, because a lot of people are thinking that they may not be there in the finals next year. But looking at the list, they really lost one major contributor from the squad last year.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're definitely going to make finals. Like, if any of your listeners are saying, "Oh, this guy's delusional," he thinks Essendon's going to win the premiership or anything, I'm not saying that, guys. I honestly think we'll probably finish around 10th, but I wouldn't be surprised if we finish in the lower half of the top 8, because, we could just surprise people, because I think we do have a squad, a team with good potential.
Okay. Well, Harper, man, I appreciate you coming on. I wish you the best of luck with your exams coming up in the next few days. Let's, make sure I don't know how the grading system works there. What's the highest? Is an A there? Is that your highest grade?
Oh, it's a bit of a complex to explain. Lots of people in Year 12 don't even know how it works, but we use an ATAR down here, and it's just a rank for all the students in Year 12 students in Australia, and you can get a 99.95 ATAR, and that's the maximum you can get. And if you do badly, you might get a 35 or whatever. So you've all got your special ATAR scores individually.
Okay, that's I've been teaching now for this is my 27th year teaching, so it's interesting to learn how that works somewhere else, and how that whole system. It'd be great to learn a little bit more about that.
Can I just add one thing before I go?
Absolutely.
I'd just like to add, lots of people are a bit disappointed we didn't get Josh Dunkley, but I definitely would have preferred not spending 2 top 10 picks on Josh Dunkley, because I just don't think he is a player that's worth that much, to be honest. And I think we could, if our Ben Rutten is good enough at coaching, I think he could get decent performances out of the team this season with what we've got.
Now, that wasn't a shot at me because I'm a Cats fan, and we just spent 3 first-rounders on bringing in Jeremy Cameron, was it?
Well, Jeremy Cameron, I think he will do very well for the Cats, actually. He's well suited to that team. I think I'm not an expert, but I reckon he could kick 60 plus next season for the Cats.
Oh, that would be wonderful. That would be absolutely wonderful. Well, hey, Harper, I appreciate you coming on, man. I hope your hay fever gets better. You know, that is a sign of the weather getting warmer. Okay,
it was a pleasure coming on, mate. Yeah, lovely to talk about the Bombers and lovely to talk to you about footy in general.
Yeah, you go ahead and enjoy that warm weather. We're at about 2 degrees Celsius with about 50-mile-an-hour winds all day today.
Wow!
So the wind has been howling here today. So I would take the hay fever over the howling winds. So again, ladies and gents, that was Harper Pessinger from the Where Do We Begin podcast, and he's a huge Bombers fan. Again, tune into their podcast, guys. I think you'll really enjoy it. They've got a ton of energy. They love what they're doing, and they do a pretty darn good job at it. So I strongly encourage you checking it out. Okay. So Harper, thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Pleasure talking to you, Craig.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is somebody that I've had a chance to talk with before on his podcast, and I'm glad to be welcoming him here. He is the third member of the soon-to-be very famous Where Do We Begin podcast. He is Lachie Gibbs, and Lachie is a Cat supporter, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you are a Cat supporter, right? I thought so. That's why you're here. So we're here to talk about the Cats trade period and see what Lachie thinks about that. Thanks for coming on, Lachie.
Oh, mate, it's an absolute pleasure. That was an awesome intro for me. I really appreciate it. And, I'm feeling really good. I feel a little bit like it's a home game at GMHBA at the moment, being on with a fellow Catsman and yourself, Craig. So I'm super pumped to talk about our mighty Catters and hopefully discussing how we'll go one better in 2021.
Oh, let's hope so. Yeah, I spoke to somebody from Port Adelaide recently as well, and they're hoping the same thing. They're hoping to get past Richmond as well. So when the trade period ended, what was going through your mind? What was your initial reaction? What did you think after everything had wrapped up and you saw who the Cats had added and what they gave up to get what they got?
Yeah, it was a pretty frantic that last afternoon with the Jeremy Cameron deal. Being one of the final ones done just before 7:30, I think. And I was actually at cricket training at the time. So, I was sort of like making excuses to go to my cricket bag to get my phone out and look at a few updates of the trades I've gone through. And I think overall, I actually think it was a good deal. I feel a lot of people are just looking at the fact that we obviously gave up 3 first-round draft picks for Jeremy Cameron, but we also got 2 future picks back with the Essendon second-round pick and the GWS second-round pick. So that gives us potentially next year 3 top 30 picks along with our own first round pick in a very strong 2021 draft. And the fact that we got Jeremy Cameron, the 2019 Coleman medalist, I think it's a pretty phenomenal trade period. And I think an awesome part of that is that we didn't actually give up too many players. Yes, our first pick is only pick 51 in the upcoming draft, but then we didn't give up at the Jordan Clarks of the world as an example, the Brandon Parfits, the Sam Simpsons, the Saba Radagaliers. So I feel like that's a really positive. However, we did lose a few fringe players along the way, and I want to ask you about this, man. Nakai Cockatoo. What are your thoughts on that, Craig? I'm a massive Nakai man myself.
I'm a little I'm sad about it, but I'm happy for him. Because if he's healthy, this is going to be an opportunity for him to shine. And in Brisbane, I didn't realize he was on Instagram, and then somebody here in the States sent me a link to his goodbye note on Instagram, and I put a response on there, basically saying that he's the reason I became a Cat supporter. He's the one that kind of pushed me over to become a Cat supporter, and I wished him luck, and he actually gave it a thumbs up or whatever you do on Instagram, gave it a like or whatever. So that was kind of nice. But yeah. I wish him the best going forward. I wish it would have been great had it been able to figure out how to keep him here, because I think if he's healthy, having him and Charlie Cameron running down the grounds next to one another is going to be terrifying for defenses.
Yeah, and like Brisbane's medical staff have just been phenomenal. Like you have like Lincoln McCarthy, Grant Birchall, Luke Hodge, who up there have had no injury issues. So I'm very much like you. I love Nakai, and I'm wishing him all the best up there. And he also just seems like a great guy. So I just hope he does well.
I do too. I told him, I said, I'm still a Cat supporter, but I'm not going to stop being a Cockatoo fan. So I'd love to bring him on for a chat sometime. But so you don't think that the Cats gave up too much here? You think that this deal actually worked out pretty well for them because they got those second round picks back?
The Jeremy Cameron deal?
Yes, the Cameron deal. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, ideally, it would have been awesome if Giants didn't match. But,
yes, that would have been preferable.
That would have been perfect. But there was just so many different names sort of floating around in trade discussions, as discussed before. They asked for like Parfit, Radicalia. So I feel like the fact that in a draft where we haven't seen a lot of the Victorian kids play, it wasn't as important to keep me. Those like pick 20 will end up buying out to like pick 24 due to the academy selections in the top 15 or so picks, and the fact that we got those 2 second round picks back, I don't think it's too much to give up when you get a quality player like Cameron, and gives us just an awesome chance to hopefully win a premiership next year. Because I don't remember which media personality said it, but we have Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins in the same forward line as one of the most potent forward lines I think I've seen in at least the last decade.
Yeah, and I talked with another Cat supporter, and I had to qualify it and say that I'm not equating this person with the person I'm going to say he could become a smaller version of this or a minor version of this. But think about what Richmond has done with Tom Lynch and with Jack Riewoldt. And it's, you have to pick your poison. Who are you going to defend? And while that's going on, who's sweeping through and picking up the mongrel ball on the ground and kicking the ball at all angles to score? Here comes Dusty, kicking 4 goals against us in the grand final. I think that on a smaller scale, I think that could be Brian Myers going forward in the next few years.
Right. Well, what will the defenses do when Danger goes forward and you've got Cameron, Hawkins, and Danger? Danger could potentially get the 3rd defender.
That's true. It's this leads to the question, is this the most excited that you've been as a Cat supporter since they last won the premiership?
No, to be honest, the most excited I think I've been as a Cats supporter was probably round 1, 2019, when we had those 4 debutants, Tom Atkins, Charlie Constable, Graham Myers, Jordan Clark. That just felt like, and also had Luke Dalhouse and Gary Rowan playing their first games for the club. To me, that just felt like such a refresh for the club, and just bringing in 6 new names into our round 1 side. But then this would have to be a close second, though. I guess getting in so many talented players in Cameron, and then also Smith and Higgins, who I'm not completely sold on. I'd love your thoughts on getting Sean Higgins in, Craig.
A lot. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about him. He's somebody that's got a ton of experience. Is he somebody that you see slotting back possibly into Harry Taylor's spot?
Sean Higgins?
Yeah. Or is he playing up forward?
No. He's he would play more of a half forward.
Okay.
Mid role, maybe play a little bit inside, or he's a very skillful player. I think in Harry Taylor's position, you'll likely see Mark Blitzarves go into defence, or if we're playing against a smaller forward line, the small chances that Jake Cole-Jasny, because he's about 193 centimetres, he could potentially play on a smaller second tall. But then we also have our first round pick from the 2019 draft, which is another reason why I feel like giving up too many picks wasn't necessarily an issue this year. And the fact that we had 2 first rounders in last year that were yet to be seen.
Is that
so that's less of an issue. Yeah, Sam DeConing, who's a local Mount Martha boy where I grew up.
Okay. Yeah, because he's 200. I'm looking at the list here. He's only 19. And he's 200 centimeters. And only 85 kilos it has listed there, so he's going to need to fill out a little bit as well.
I think he's bulked up, but he comes from pretty good footballing skills. His old man played a few games for Footscray back in the day, Western Bulldogs, and his older brother plays at Carlton, Tom DeConing.
Yeah. Okay, that's a name that I have heard in a lot of places that people have real high expectations for him coming this year. And that's going to be nice to see. Especially you got a 200 centimeter defender. That's a nice piece to be able to plug back in there.
Yeah,
And
definitely. And in a couple of the practice matches against, we played a scratch match against Richmond, and he managed to kick 4 goals in his first game forward. So he's played a bit of ruck, a bit of forward, a bit of back. So he's a really versatile player. But I think by the sounds of it, defense is his most natural position. So I wouldn't expect him to start there, but I feel like he's somebody that can definitely, you can expect to see play a couple games next year.
Okay, yeah, that's trying to remember who the other name was. There was another name that Cooper Stevens was the other one that people have been talking about a lot. I think that's the other one that people have been saying that could be ready for a breakout this year as well, or finally get in on the side.
Yeah, first round pick. By the sounds of it, he was pretty close this year, so I think he will be another person that will sort of slot. And he's played a little bit of halfback since he's come to the Cats, so we might see him in defence. But he was obviously drafted as an inside mid. He had a broken leg during his draft year. But I think in his bottom age year, so his under 17 year, he was one of the Geelong Falcons' best players, local talent. I'm very excited to see him in the blue and white hoops next year as well.
So I've asked the other Cat supporters this, and I'll ask you this again. Do you think that that they have done enough to get past the Tigers this year, if they get that opportunity?
Yeah, well, it's so hard to tell because, Richmond have been one of the best side pretty much of the last 4 years.
Right.
And I guess it's a really difficult question because we're sitting here in November. We can have all these parts that we've just got, but it doesn't mean that they're going to fit. And I guess if you look at history, apart from when Tom Lynch is gone, like how many times has when the best player gone to an established team that hasn't necessarily translated into the premiership? Like as Cats fans, we would know we got Dangerfield in 2015. 2016, we made a prelim final, but we didn't win a premiership. I guess look back at like Chris Judd at Carlton. Yes, Carlton weren't a stronger side, but they didn't necessarily go on. I know these are midfielders, but then I guess you got the more recent example of Tom Lynch going to Richmond, but they were already a premiership team.
Right.
So I don't know because you look at so many teams that have improved during this period. Bulldogs have got Trelaw. Brisbane have got Joe Danaher and sorted out some of probably their forward issues and got our man Nakai, as we discussed earlier. So I think every team has improved. So,
well, come on. Let's be honest. Collingwood's still in the cup. Did they improve really?
Okay, not every. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Every team that would be potentially worried about. I don't reckon we're worried about the Pies anyway. Bloody hell.
Yeah, I talked to a Pies supporter this morning, and he was somebody that liked all of the moves that the team made. So that was a fascinating conversation because he laid out what were the positive aspects of what they had done, and he made a very compelling argument. So I'm looking forward to other Pies supporters hearing what he had to say.
I'm very interested in hearing what he had to say because I don't see how on any face of the earth that could be the moves that they made were good. It ripped it up from an outsider's perspective. Sounds like it sort of ripped out a bit of the culture of the club.
So that's true. Yeah, that was part of the stuff that I was asking him about as well. Is this something that's going to turn off prospective free agents? Because if you make a conscious decision to go there, and they turn around, a year later and say, we're going to send you somewhere else because we're in kind of a money crunch. But again, you can't really blame them because nobody could have anticipated COVID having the impact that it did on teams and their revenues and the money that they happen to have on hand.
It wasn't an issue of revenue. It was an issue of fitting all the players within the salary cap, and the salary cap hasn't actually changed. So COVID didn't have an impact on that.
Okay, well then they screwed up royally then.
Yeah, so I guess it's different to it's sort of similar in American sports because I know in basketball you have some of the you have shared revenue, so which helps prop up some of the bottom teams. You have that in the AFL with Collingwood because they have so many members and such a rich club, so some of their money will go to the lower clubs like Bulldogs or North that aren't earning as much. But no, so the issue there they had was they couldn't fit all the players within the salary cap.
Okay.
So it was total mismanagement. And I think it wouldn't just affect free agents, it affects current players there. So just say they have this salary crunch next year, and what they've been doing is they've been back-ending deals. So like Trelaw would have been on 700,000 or 800,000, then they've asked him, could we back-end it so you're on 900 for the last 5 years of your career? And he's done the right thing by the club. Then they've turned around and said, we're paying you too much. So then, if they do that to another player, while the other player do that when they're taking them longer for them to get their money,
That's a great point.
The club will just turn around and just say, look, we're paying you too much, when it was their fault and their mismanagement. But I think we're getting a bit sidetracked here. Let's get back to the Cats.
We are there, yes. So, one of the other questions I've been asking people is, was there somebody that I've been talking all day at school today. I've got a bit of a sore throat here. Was there somebody that you were hoping the Cats would have thought about bringing in?
Well, there wasn't somebody that I would have liked to have brought in, but there's definitely somebody that I'd like to keep, and that is Quinton Narkle. He still hasn't been offered a contract from the Cats, and he's somebody that I rate very, very highly. I think he's a great player. I was surprised that he didn't get a run in our team in finals. I was a bit if you go back, and anybody that has a spare 10 minutes, go back and look at the scratch match highlights, mate. He was at a class above everybody else at that level, and I just can't believe, I guess, due to list sizes, he hasn't been offered a contract yet. So he'd definitely be somebody that I'd want to be signing up, giving him a big preseason, and I think he will definitely push into our best 22.
Right, because we've got Higgins, and now that I'm thinking about it, they're basically saying that he's going to slot into Ablett's spot in the lineup, or in the 22. I knew that, and I'm old, and I forgot that I knew that.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on the Sean Higgins thing. A lot of people point to Stephen Wells's record, but I feel like another person over 30. And you look at last year, we brought in Josh Jenkins and Jack Stephen, who are two people that I definitely wouldn't consider success stories in the trade period.
No,
we didn't give up too much for either of them. So I'm looking at Higgins. I do expect them to be better than those two, but I'm not too fussed about necessarily giving up the pick 30 to get him. My bigger issue is taking away game time from our young players, like your Narkles, your Clarks, your Cooper Stevens, just off the top of my head. Even maybe Sam Simpson, who had an awesome final series. They'll be competing for spots. So I have a bigger issue, I guess, with that one. But I like Isaac Smith, and I guess seeing Smith probably go to a wing will, in my opinion, despite the fact he had one of his best seasons, I'd expect Sam Menegola and Mitch Duncan maybe play a bit more of an inside role with the inclusion of Smith and Higgins, who can both play outside.
Well, now one of the things about Menegola is that I noticed this year is that he does such a phenomenal job that if he's going to kick the ball, he gets rid of it more quickly than just about anybody I have seen. He's very sure of himself.
Yeah. How good is it? He's a beautiful shot at goal as well. How about that one in the grand final from 55?
Yeah. Oh. It's he's somebody that could become an even greater contributor than he has been in terms of scoring, and and that was somebody, if I'm not mistaken, he was somebody that the GWS was kind of alluding to that they would maybe like to have coming up there in the camera deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Mate, who can blame them? Yeah, I think his name was floated by Lee Montagna, and if you saw the Irving Mosquito, the Essendon players post, Essendon were looking at Menegola too as well as a target, but that wasn't discussed too much. But you can't blame them. I think Menegola, he's a big body. I expect him to play a little bit more inside next year, because we have those a few more outside players, and when it will allow Dangerfield to again play a little bit more forward.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it. But like you said, it is only November, but AFLW will be starting before we know it. And hopefully they will be able to get in a full season. And hopefully if there's any kind of a hiccup as far as the scheduling because of anything that happens, hopefully they afford them the same opportunities to complete their season that they gave the AFL this year.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Now, I know you've got to get somewhere here in just a couple of minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up. And Lachie, I want to thank you for coming on.
It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Truly
appreciate it. It's lots of fun talking to you guys. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and combine one episode with the three of you into a single episode, and I'm going to try to get that edited out and hopefully out this evening. I've got to do some house cleaning. My son's coming home. He's in the Navy. He's coming home for the first time in about 18 months. I haven't seen him in over a year.
That's very exciting, mate. Bloody hell.
I have to go clean his bedroom because we've been piling boxes in his room since he's been gone, and now I have to get the boxes out of his room. So, hey, have a great day at work. Okay.
Thanks so much, mate.
I appreciate you coming on. I'll send you a link to this when it's all done, and I will send you a link to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington as well.
I can't wait to watch it.
Okay.
All right, thanks so much for having me, mate.
Do you want me to send the assignment that I have my kids do for the film?
I've just finished uni for the year, mate. So
Okay.
I'll be all right. Thanks.
Have a great Wednesday. Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed those chats with Harper and Jackson and Lachie from the Where Do We Begin podcast. Don't forget that if you'd like to sign up for the mailing list for my podcast, it's easy to do. You'll get each episode sent directly to you first and foremost. There's a link in the show notes, a little short 4-question Google form for your email and who you support, that type of thing. And if you got a question you wanted to ask me or something you think I should look at in an episode, I'll get you on that list, lickety-split, and get you going there, okay? Now, also, if you'd like to possibly be a guest on the podcast to talk about your club's trade period, I'm looking at trying to get another 15 or 20 or so of these interviews done over the next couple of weeks. Feel free to reach out to me at yank_on Twitter, or send me a message on my Facebook page at Yank on the Footy, or you can email me at yankonthefooty@gmail.com. You know, I've spoken to fans of 7 clubs or supporters of 7 clubs as of right now, but I haven't tracked down anybody yet that's an Eagles supporter, a Giant supporter, anybody. You know, I've got somebody I believe lined up for the Tigers, but I'd love to hear from you. You guys are the defending premiers twice over. You know, Crows supporter, somebody supporting the Suns, the Saints, the Roos, the Hawks, the Demons, and the Bulldogs, as well as the Dockers. So if you're if you're a supporter of one of the other 7 teams that I have already had discussions about, I would still love to talk to you as well, because I want to hear what your thoughts are about the game, what you think's going on, where you think your club is, maybe how the new rule changes that have just come out today or yesterday are going to impact your club as well. So, like I said, if you're a supporter of any of the clubs and you want to come in and talk about your trade period, hit me up in one of those spots and then let me know, and I would love to set something up for you. Okay, but keep in mind, though, I have to work around my work schedule as a school teacher, and Melbourne is 16 hours ahead of me, so there's a lot of late night or early morning interviews that we're doing. And also, if you got an idea for another show topic, or someone who you think I should bring on to discuss, or you have a connection with somebody that you think would be a great guest, please reach out to me. Send me a DM on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget that while you can find all the episodes of this podcast at yankonthefooty.podbean.com, you can also find it on your favorite podcast provider. And now that we've finished up this episode, I would love it if you'd consider giving a review on Apple Podcast. It lets me know what you think of the show, what I'm doing well, what could I do better, what's missing, that type of thing. What's there that maybe surprises you or impresses you. I hope that's the case. You can also, as I said before, you can reach me at yankonthefooty@gmail.com, or on Twitter at yank_on, and Facebook and Instagram at yankonthefooty. I'd be remiss before I wrapped up the episode if I didn't thank Joseph McDade. I'm using a couple pieces of his great music. He's created some fantastic music. I'm using Backplate and Elevation. You can find his music at josephmcdade.com/music, as well as on Spotify. And I also should mention, you can also find this podcast on my YouTube channel. Just search out my name, Craig Wessels. And I invite you to, like I said, to sign up for the mailing list, and you'll get that podcast episode before anybody else does. I hit publish, and the first thing I do after that is I go in and I pull that link out, and I send that link for the new episode off to the people who are signed up. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening, because while many of us are fans of our teams, deep down we're fans of the game that we all love. That's the game of footy. Sounds like there is some fantastic news on the COVID front in Australia. Things are looking up. Things are looking very positive in Victoria. South Australia, I know there's been a little bit of a bump there, a little bit of a hiccup. I hope everything works out. I hope you get everything under control. We're still figuring things out here in the United States. The vaccine sounds like it's on the way, and we'll see how that goes. Here in the state of Ohio, our governor just issued a curfew. Now, this is interesting, and I'm not sure what I think about this curfew, although I think it was kind of I know what I think. It was kind of dumb. He's decided that retail establishments, so bars, restaurants, stores, things of that nature, will have to be closed between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. That's going to solve the COVID crisis here in the state of Ohio. No, it's not. Because what it's going to do is it's going to have the unintended consequence of sending those people who would normally be going to a grocery store to do their shopping at 11 o'clock at night, or getting up early to go to a gym, or whatever the case may be. They might work a shift that would require them going to a store when it's not very crowded and there's a lower risk of being around somebody with COVID. And now they're going to be compelled to go to that retail establishment when there's a larger number of people there. I think the foresight put forth by the governor of my state right now was not real good. Not terribly impressed with this decision that he made. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's enough politics. This is not a political podcast. That's not what I'm trying to do here at all. Thank you so very much for listening. I ask that you consider sharing the podcast with your friends and family. Keep on the lookout for subsequent episodes in this series. I have, like I said, 6 more interviews done right now that I'm going to be working at plugging in, and I'm going to probably drop those here in fairly rapid succession. So you'll probably see another one in a couple of days and another one in a couple of days after that. So again, thank you so very much. And ladies and gentlemen, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I'll catch you later. This has been episode number 59 of A Yank on the Footy, my discussion with Harper, Lachie, and Jackson of the Where Do We Begin podcast. Don't forget that you can reach me at yank_on on Twitter, or to yankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook at A Yank on the Footy. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening, and please consider sharing the podcast with your friends and family. Send them a link. Hold the tab down, hit that copy button, send it off to your friends. They'll thank you for it. And if they won't thank you for it, I can assure you I'll thank you for it. In fact, I'll do it right now. Thanks a bunch. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, goodbye.